This is my assignment 4.3 research designs. So I'm going to start off with what a research design actually is. And a research design is something like a structure to how the researcher is going to collect their data and conduct their study, observation or experiment or whatever. This may include thinking of an aim or thinking about what the outcomes might be and how they're going to find this data. So these are very important to help us gain more reliable results by supporting our hypothesis or what you are aiming to find out. A research method is, however, the little parts which make up an experiment, study or observation and explain how something has happened and why. For example, how the data is going to be collected. Is it by an observation or questionnaire? So research designs, different studies need to be conducted in different ways to help us find out a specific result. And these different ways of conducting the studies will be through research designs. And there are different research designs and therefore they're dependent on what the researcher is aiming to find out. These are several different types of research design and which one the researcher picks will depend on what they are aiming to find out. So the first one is a longitudinal study. This is a study done over a long period of time and can be continued for years. This is a clear disadvantage already because it is very time consuming. This type of study shows a change over a long period of time and can be done both in groups or individuals. It's high ecological validity because it's taking place within a real life situation. And a good longitudinal study which could be done for young female gymnasts would be factors which contribute to their performance and anxieties. This could be done personal, family life, sleep patterns, eating habits, and many other contributions. So a correlation is looking at a relationship between a minimum of two variables. These variables aren't going to be manipulated and there can be positive, negative or neutral correlations. If the correlation is positive, it is equal to 1. If it is negative, -1 and neutral 0. So the stronger the positive or negative correlation, the steeper the gradient on the graph is going to be. An example of a correlational study is seeing the relationship between age and flexibility. Due to the fact that the variables aren't manipulated, we see an increase in ecological validity as we can apply it to real life easily, but it cannot say why or what has caused the relationship between the two variables. It only says it only states like the correlation. So a comparative study is when people with similar or some of the same characteristics are looked at and then they are compared. An example of this could be comparing the lead up to a performance anxieties from one contestant to another. This could suggest the different ways which performers lead up to a competition and what others can do to reduce their anxieties. So a cross-sectional study. This is looking at the general population at a specific point in time, so it's identifying the relationship within the population. It accounts for all differences between everyone within that population and uses it to help collect data. An example of this could be using participants from all different ages, genders or abilities and looking at that group of people. This type of study is very quick and easy due to the fact all the data is collected at once. However, you need a wide range of people to be your participants, so this could be quite hard to find these participants. the data collected isn't hard evidence, and therefore it's difficult to prove anything or apply it to real life. Oh no, you can apply it to real life, but it's just hard to prove it. An experimental design is when participants are randomly allocated, variables are controlled, and the independent variable is manipulated to show its effect on the dependent variable. An example of this could be a gymnast could perform in a small space and then in a big space. The size of the gymnasium is the variable that is being manipulated and hopefully will show an effect on the gymnast's performance. A case study is usually done on a specific individual or a specific group of people, and it goes into a lot of depth and detail on them. An example of this could be a case study on a young female gymnast squad, and it could look at their personal lives and how that affects the group morale and the group dynamics. So rich data is collected from this. However, time is an issue because it can take a very long period of time. As this type of study is so specific on one group of people, it cannot be generalized to the rest of the population. So next we have different types of data. So we have primary data and secondary data. I'm going to start off with primary data, and this is collected by yourself. So you are doing the data collection yourself. As this is a very first-hand type of data collection, it is more reliable, and you know what is happening because you were there and you can interpret that. However, it can be time-consuming and expensive as you're doing it yourself. You could also run into researcher bias because you know what data you want, and therefore you can manipulate it to get the results that you want. An example of this, you may go along to a local gymnastics club and ask them if you can carry out a certain study on them to get data for analysis. So now going on to secondary data, this is data which has been collected by someone else or another researcher. As this is second-hand data, it could be deemed as less reliable as you haven't been there to witness how they've done the study or experiment or whatever. As well as this, the other researcher may have interpreted the data differently, giving different results and conclusions. However, this is more convenient and less time consuming as you're not having to do research yourself. An example of this could be getting data from another researcher when they have been to a different club and carried out a certain study to gain results. So here we have the 4 different classifications of data. So starting with discrete data, this provides us with more quantitative data as the questions are going to be more closed, for example, yes or no. So an example of these types of questions would be, do you have asthma? Yes or no. Do you smoke? Yes or no. So the questions are very closed and there is always a set answer. Next we have continuous data, and this is more numerical data again. So this is split into 2 categories, interval and ratio. Interval continuous data can be negative values and it is able to go below 0. For example, you could use the body temperature pre and post performance, whereas ratio continuous data, which has a meaningful 0, so it means that it cannot go below 0. An example of this would be heart rate of a young gymnast, measuring that throughout their performance. The fact this is ratio because it cannot go below 0. If someone's heart rate goes below 0, they're clearly going to be dead. The next classification is nominal, and this is where there are named classifications for mutually exclusive categories. An example of this could be gender. There is no There is no order within the classification, and there is limited in descriptive ability. This is a frequency data classification, so making categories and making it tally like system to score up or whatever. An example of this could be putting the young female gymnasts into different categories dependent on their anxiety levels. Ordinal data is the last classification, and it is putting data into relative ranking order. For example, the best performer will be ranked first, then the second will be ranked second, and so on. So now going on to qualitative data collection, and qualitative data is information about qualities, information that can't really be measured. So the data collection will be rich, descriptive, and examples of data collection could be the thoughts and feelings of a gymnast. Due to this, it is very subjective, meaning it is personal opinions. However, the fact that these opinions are However, the fact that these are opinions means that it lacks reliability. Firstly, the opinions may not be true because they have influenced because of social desirability, or secondly, the researcher may have interpreted what they said wrong, producing unreliable results and data. The data collection process can be done via interviews, focus groups, and observations. So now moving on to one of the data collection processes, so interviews. There are four main types of interview structures, and an interview is a verbal conversation between two people. The objective of an interview is to collect data relevant to the analysis for research. So the four main types of research: structured, semi-structured, unstructured, and focus groups. So this is the first type of interview. A structured interview are essentially verbal administered questionnaires in which a list of predetermined questions are asked with little or no variation within, allowing no scope for follow-up questions to warrant further elaboration. An example of this would be being face-to-face with a young female gymnast and knowing the questions you're going to ask them before you start the interview. So advantages for this type of interview is that as the questions are set, it means that you can't go off topic and waste time. As questions have already been thought through, it means that the researcher knows what they are going to do and they don't waste time thinking up questions on the spot. If they're thinking up questions on the spot, it means that they might not be relevant questions. So the same amount of data will be collected for each person as the same questions are going to be asked, and therefore it's much easier to compare data as you can compare it and find a relationship or something. A disadvantage is there are no follow-up questions, which means the researcher cannot gain a clarity. So data might be misinterpreted or misread. Even though time is being saved on not having to make up questions, face-to-face is more time-consuming due to the fact that some people find it hard to get words out. So the next type of interview is semi-structured, and this consists of several key questions that help to define the area to be explored, but it also allows the interviewer or interviewee to diverge in order to pursue an idea or response in more detail. An example of this would be knowing what you'd like to find out from the young female gymnast and having a few questions to ask them. However, you can have follow-up questions and so on. An advantage is the fact that there is still guide means that they don't waste time, and there's also flexibility, meaning you can have follow-up questions to gain data that you need. And disadvantages is that you can still go off topic as it doesn't have set questions.